Good day everyone, we are the Group 4 and we are about to share our lesson and comment during the speech of President Corazon Aquino before the U.S. Congress on September 18, 1986. Before we start, let me introduce to you who is Corazon Aquino. Her full name is Maria Corazon Somolong Coangco Aquino. She is the 11th President and first female President of the Philippines. She was born on January 25, 1933 in Tarlac, Philippines. She was graduated from the College of Mount St. Vincent in New York City in 1953 with bachelor degree in both French and mathematics. Her father was Jose Coangco and her mother is Demetria Sumulong. Her term started on February 25, 1986 until June 30, 1993 and died on August 1, 2009.
Members will be seated. Members of the Congress, it is my great privilege, and I deem it a high honor and personal privilege, to present to you Her Excellency Corazon C. Aquino, President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Three years ago, I left America in a grief to bury my husband, Ninoy Aquino. I thought I had left it also to lay to rest his restless dream of a Philippine freedom. Today, I have returned as the President of a free people. In burying Ninoy, a whole nation honored him. By the brave and selfless act of giving honor, a nation in shame recovered its own. A country that had lost his faith on his future found it in a faithless and a brazen act murder. So in a giving, we receive, in a losing we find, and out of a defeat we snatch our victory. For the nation, Ninoy became the place in sacrifice that answered the prayers for our freedom. For myself and our children, Ninoy was a loving husband and a father. His lost 3 times in our lives was always in a deep and a painful one. 14 years ago this month was the first time we lost him, a president turned dictator and a traitor to his oath, suspended the Constitution and shut down the Congress that was such like this one before which I am honored to speak. He detained my husband along with 1,000 of other senators, publishers, and anyone who had spoken up for the democracy at its ends drew near. But for Ninoy, a long and a cruel order was reserved. The dictator already knew that Ninoy was not a body merely to be imprisoned by the spirit he must break. For even as the institution of the democracy, the press, the Congress, the independence of the judiciary, the protection of the Bill of Rights, Ninoy keep their spirits alive himself. The government sought to break him on indignities and terror. They locked him up in a tiny, nearly airless cells in a military camp in the north. They stripped him naked and held the threat of the sudden midnight execution of his head. Ninoy was held up manfully, all of it. I barely did not as well. For 43 days, the authorities would not tell me what happened to him. This was the first time my children and I felt we lost him. When that didn't work, they put him on a trial subversion, murder and host of the other crimes before the military commission. Ninoy challenges its authority and went on a fast. If he survived it, then he felt God intended him for another fate. We had lost him again, for nothing would hold him back from his determination to see his fast through to the end. He stopped only when it dawned on him that the government would keep his body alive after the fast has destroyed his brain. And so, with a burly and life in his body, he called off the fast of the 14th day. God meant him for another thing, he felt. He did not know that an early death would still be his fate. That's the only thing that was wrong. At any time during his long ordered, Ninoy could have made a separate pace with a dictatorship as so many of his countrymen have done. But the spirit of the democracy that inheres in our race and animates his chamber could not be allowed to die. He held out, in the loneliness of his cells and the frustration of exile, the democratic alternative to the insatiable greed and the mindless cruelty of the right and the purging holocaust of the left. And then we lost him, irrevocably and more painful than that in the past. The news came to us in Boston. It had to be after the 3 happiest years of our lives together. But his death was my country's resurrection in a courage and faith by which alone they could be free again. The dictator had called him a nobody. 2 million people threw aside their passivity and exhorted him to his grave. And so began the revolution that brought me to the democracy most famous home, the Congress of the United States. The task has fallen on my shoulder to continue offering the democratic alternative to our people. Archibald MacLeish has said that democracy must be defended by arm when it is attacked by arm and by truth. When it is attacked by lies, he failed to say how it shall be won. I held fast Ninoy's conviction that it must be by ways of the democracy. I held out for the participations in 1984 elections of the dictatorship called. Even if I know it, it would be rigid. I was warned by the lawyer of the opposition that I can run the grave risk of legitimizing the foregone result of the elections that were clearly going to be fraudulent. But I was not fighting for a lawyer, but for the people in whose intelligence I had implicate faith. By the exercise of the democracy, even if the dictatorship, they would be prepared for the democracy when it comes. And then also, it was the only way I know by which we could measure our power, even if the term dictated by the dictatorship. The people vindicated me in an election shamefully marked by the government tendery and fraud. The opposition swept the elections, garnering a clear majority of the votes, even if they ended up, thanks to the corrupt commissions on election, with barely a third of the seats of the parliament. Now I know our power. Last year, in an excess of arrogance, the dictatorship called for its doom in a snap election. The people obliged. With over 1 million signatures, they drafted me to challenge the dictatorship, and I obliged them to rest in the history that dramatically unfold on your television screens and across the front page of your newspaper. You saw a nation armed with courage and integrity, stand fast by the democracy against street the corruption. You saw women poll watchers break out in tears and armed goons crushing the polling places to steal the ballot, but just the same, they tied themselves to the ballot boxes. You saw a people so committed to the ways of the democracy that they were prepared to give their lives for its pale imitations. At the end of the day, before another waves of fraud could distort the results, I announced the people's victory. I was witness to an extraordinary manifestation of the democracy on the part of the Filipino people. The ultimate result was the election of Ms. Corazon C. Aquino as the President and Mr. Salvador Laurel as the Vice President of the Philippines. Many of you here today played a part in changing the policy of your country toward us. We, Filipinos, thanks each of you for what you did, for balancing America's strategic interest against humans' concern, illuminate the American visions of the world.
When a subservient parliament announced my opponent's victory, the people turned out in the street and proclaimed me president. And true to their word, when a handful of military leaders declared themselves against dictatorship, the people rallied to their protection. Surely, the people take care of their own. It is on that faith and the obligation it entails that I assumed the presidency. As I came to power peacefully, so shall I keep it. That is my contract with my people and my commitment to God. He had willed that the blood drawn with a lash shall not, in my country, be paid by blood drawn by the sword, but by the tearful joy of reconciliation. We have swept away absolute power by a limited revolution that respected the life and freedom of every Filipino. Now, we are restoring full constitutional government. Again, as we restore the democracy by the ways of democracy, so are we completing the constitutional structures of our new democracy under a constitution that already gives full respect to the Bill of Rights. A jealously independent constitutional commission is completing its draft, which will be submitted later this year to a popular referendum. When it is approved, there will be congressional elections. So within about a year from a peaceful but national upheaval that overturned a dictatorship, we shall have returned to full constitutional government. Given the polarization and breakdown we inherited, this is no small achievement. My predecessor set aside democracy to save it from a communist insurgency that numbered less than 500. Unhampered by respect for human rights, he went at it hammer and tongs. By the time he fled, that insurgency had grown to more than 16,000. I think there is a lesson here to be learned about trying to stifle a thing with the means which it grows. I don't think anybody, in or outside our country, concerned for a democratic and open Philippines, doubts what must be done. Through political initiatives and local reintegration programs, we must seek to bring the insurgents down from the hills and, by economic progress and justice, show them that for which the best intentioned among them fight. As President, I will not betray the cause of peace by which I came to power. Yet equally, and again no friend of Filipino democracy will challenge this. I will not stand by and allow an insurgent leadership to spurn our offer of peace and kill our young soldiers and threaten our new freedom. Yet, I must explore the path of peace to the utmost for its end. Whatever disappointment I met there is the moral basis for laying down the olive branch of peace and taking up the sword of war. Still, should it come to that, I will not waver from the course laid down by your great liberator. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the rights as God gives us to see the rights, let us finish the work we are in. To bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him shall have burned the battle, and for his widow and for his orphans, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Like Lincoln, I understand that force may be necessary before mercy. Like Lincoln, I don't relish it, yet I will do whatever it takes to defend the integrity and freedom of my country. Finally, may I turn to that over slavery, our $26 billion foreign debt. I have said that we shall honor it, yet must the means by which we shall be able to do so be kept from us. Many conditions imposed on the previous government that stole this debt continue to be imposed on us who never benefited from it, and no assistance of liberality commensurate with the calamity that was visited on us has been extended. Yet ours must have been the cheapest revolution ever. With little help from others, we Filipinos fulfilled the first and most difficult conditions of the debt negotiation, the full restoration of democracy and responsibility government. Elsewhere, and in other times of more stringent world economic conditions, Marshall plans and their like were felt to be necessary companions of returning democracy. When I met the President Reagan yesterday, we began an important dialogue about cooperation and the strengthening of the friendship between our two countries. That meeting was both a confirmation and a new beginning and should lead to positive results in all areas of common concern. Today, we face the aspirations of a people who have known so much poverty and massive unemployment for the past 14 years and yet offer their lives for the destruction of democracy. Wherever I went in the campaign, slum area or impoverished village, they came to me with one cry: democracy, not food, although they clearly needed it, but democracy, not work, although they surely wanted it, but democracy, not money, for they gave what little they had to my campaign. They didn't expect me to work a miracle that would instantly put food into their mouths, clothes in their back, education in their children, and work that will put dignity in their lives. But I feel the pressing obligation to respond and quickly as the leader of a people so deserving all of these things. We face a communist insurgency that feeds on economic deterioration, even as we carry a great share of the free world defenses in the Pacific. These are only two of the many burdens my people carry, even as they try to build a worthy and enduring house for their new democracy that may serve as well as redoubt for freedom in Asia. Yet, no sooner is one stone laid than two are taken away. Half our export earnings, $2 billion out of $4 billion, which was all we could earn in the restrictive markets of the world, went to pay just the interest on a debt whose benefit the Filipino people never received. Still, we fought for honor, and if only for honor, we should pay, or we shall pay. And yet, should we have to wring the payments from the sweat of our men's faces and sink all the wealth piled up by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil? Yet to all Americans, as the leader of proud and free people, I address this question: has been there a greater test of national commitment in the ideals you hold dear than that my people have gone through? You have spent many lives and much treasure to bring freedom to many lands that were reluctant to receive it. And here you have people who won it by themselves and need only to help to preserve it. 3 years ago, I said, "Thank you, America, for the haven from oppression and the home you gave Ninoy." myself and our children, and for the 3 happiest years of our lives together. Today, I say, join us, America, as we build a new home for democracy, another heaven for the oppressed, so it may stand as a shining testament of our two nations' commitment to freedom.
Good afternoon, everyone. My lesson about the Aquino speech in the U.S. was the most important lesson we can learn from Aquino's speech is that we cannot entrust our redemption to another sovereign state, and the only real solution to any type of rebellion is to address the causes. And that's all.
Hello everyone, my name is Angelo C. Panya, first year BSBA Finance Management. I'm here in front of you to talk about the speech of our previous leader, Corazon C. Aquino, on U.S. Congress in September 1986. In her speech before the Congress, Corey shared her experience and sorrow for losing a loving husband and a good father of her family. Also, on his speech, she detailed how the task to free the Filipino and fight for democracy. She mentioned how she personally experienced the corruption of the Commission on Election and praised the unity and courage of the people. At point when the previous leader of the Philippines, Corazon C. Aquino, gave a discourse the U.S. Congress in September 1986, approached the America to help our nation in keeping up to opportunity.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My lesson about Aquino's speech in the US. For our mission, Ninoy become the blessing sacrifice that answered their prayers for freedom, for myself and our children. Ninoy was a loving husband and father. He lost 3 times in our lives. Was always a deep and a painful one. Thank you.
My personal reaction regarding the speech of our late Madam President, Mrs. Corazon Aquino. I am not pro-Aquino nor anti on her administration. This is only my opinion. Everyone deserves a respect, most especially in times of grief. I felt really sad that they had lost Mr. Ninoy Aquino. I admire you, Madam, as a woman of bravery because you stand on your own beliefs. But I have one thing to ask. What does Mrs. President main objectives during her speech in U.S. Congress? Is it all about the death of her late husband? I may say thank you, Mrs. President, for the democracy which every Filipino deserves for freedom. You said, we are already free from the dictatorship of Mr. Marcos during the revolution time of 1986. I don't know if I have to agree or disagree with it. She went to U.S. Congress only to share her emotions on what was happened to her husband. How was he imprisoned and executed? Because if we based in this present time, many of Filipinos also felt regrets during their administration. Philippines has a trillions of debts. Many of big companies shut down. There is a big percentage of poverty in our country. For me, Philippines deserves a leader who have a true vision for the future of this country. I hope that we Filipinos move forward for a brighter future, and I hope we will have a good leader that will lead us into a progressive country in the future. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Grace Marie E. Quinones, and during the speech of the President Corazon Aquino, she created a new environment of freedom, human rights, and democracy of all the Filipino. Her speech played an important role to the grand narrative of Philippine history because it truly shows how Filipinos will do anything to gain freedom. In her speech before the U.S. Congress, Cory shared her experiences and sorrows for losing a loving husband and a good father of her family. She provided a brief narration of how Marcos suspended the Philippine Constitution and shut down the Congress, which eventually led to Ninoy's exile and death, highlighting the cruelty he has experienced in the hands of the military and the dictator. From this, she detailed how the task to free the Filipinos and fight for democracy fell into her soldiers. She mentioned how she personally experienced the corruption of the Commission on Elections and praised the unity and courage of the people in times of oppression. As the new president of the country, she went over some of her plans to restore the government and amending the Philippine Constitution, as well as to start reintegration program for the healing of the different localities in the country.
Good day everyone. I am Arlene T. Olivar. I will share my thoughts about the speech of Corazon C. Aquino on September 28, 1986. To be honest, I don't really understand the speech if she only share about her husband or our country. But one thing is thanks to her that she gave us a democracy in our country.